Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we're actually talking about Facebook because Facebook has a human smuggling problem. Now, this is coming from NBC News, but this data is actually coming from the Tech Transparency Project, a research group within the nonprofit watchdog Campaign for Accountability. Now, if you didn't know, the watchdog regularly publishes research highlighting technology companies' apparent failures to effectively police their platforms, including a report highlighting how the Capitol assault was actually planned on Facebook. Now, this week, the group published a report that was previewed by NBC News highlighting the extent to which Facebook and WhatsApp are used to organize human smuggling across the southern border of the United States. Now, the nonprofit group reported finding dozens of groups, some with tens of thousands of members, on Facebook in which human smugglers promoted their services, including posting prices, phone numbers to call, and videos of previous successful crossings. The research, which builds on a report the nonprofit published in April, also includes that some of the smugglers have links to the Mexican drug cartels. And to quote Katie Paul, director of the Tech Transparency Project, the biggest concern with these Facebook groups is that you have people who are very desperate, who are in very desperate, vulnerable situations, commingling with people that are parts of organized criminal networks, including cartels and gangs. It's a problem Facebook has known about for many years. Now, Facebook spokesperson Andy Stone said that the company prohibits, quote, content that offers to provide or facilitate human smuggling. We rely on people and technology to remove this content and work with NGOs and other stakeholders to combat ways our platform may be used by those who want to harm people. We are constantly evaluating ways to improve our enforcement so we can most effectively find and remove content that breaks our rules. Now, he also added that Facebook permits content related to seeking asylum and that it is consulted with the United Nations on its content policies about human smuggling. The policies draw on the United Nations definition of human smuggling as, and I quote, the procurement or facilitation of illegal entry into a state across international borders. Now, that doesn't necessarily involve coercion or force. It simply is the statement from the United Nations. Now, this contrasts with human trafficking, which is the business of depriving somebody of their liberty for profit, meaning you're basically selling them into some form of forced indenture, in some indentured kind of servitude or slavery. Now, since 2015, researchers and journalists have regularly identified pages connected to human smuggling on Facebook. The company has removed groups that violate its policies when they become aware of them. And I think that's an important thing to remember. Oftentimes, Facebook is basically retroactive in this sense. Now, researchers found that many of the Facebook pages identified in the report were operating in plain sight. One titled El Coyote Lopez was created in December of 2020 and advertises passage from Nicaragua into the United States for $8,000. The page, which NBC News viewed, features a WhatsApp button that allows users to instantly start a conversation with the self-described human smuggler. Some of the comments on his posts from people who purport to be happy basically thank him for his 100% safe service. Now, basically, this report also highlights a 44,000 member Facebook group called I Want to Cross the Border, but in Spanish. And basically, in this group, human smugglers are posting advertisements, in some cases videos, documenting their journeys with migrants to the U.S. One group member who was holding a gun in his profile picture posted footage of people walking and sleeping in the desert and then scaling what appears to be a border wall at the United States border. Now, the researchers also identified many other posts promoting crossings to the United States that charge a fee of roughly $700 per person that is paid to cartels when a coyote, and a coyote is basically that person that guides you across the southern U.S. border, when a coyote takes a migrant across their territory, according to the Post. Now, groups who fail to pay this fee essentially run the risk of extortion, kidnapping, or death. Now, many posts by human smugglers identified by the Tech Transparency Project spread the misinformation that the Biden administration had actually opened the southern border to migrants and that people were getting asylum more easily. But the Biden administration has been trying to dispel this type of misinformation in an effort to mitigate the current border surge. The Department of State has also been delivering this message to would-be migrants via international radio advertising campaigns across El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Brazil since late January. After the Tech Transparency Project published its findings, basically published its report, its previous report, on this issue in April, Facebook requested a list of those 50 pages and private Facebook groups so that they could basically review this. The company then removed half of them, but 19 remain on the site as of yesterday. And obviously, this is a huge, huge problem that Facebook has. I've talked about war crimes being committed on Facebook as stolen art from war zones is being brokered and sold in languages that Facebook has a hard time moderating. This is another one where you have 44,000 in a group and it's one of a zillion different groups advertising these wares. Facebook cannot keep up with this. Their content moderation cannot keep up with this. And so the question is what to do with this. There have been calls basically to remove Facebook groups, so this kind of thing can't really happen, but that is counterintuitive to essentially Facebook's data mining model, because oftentimes people are joining groups because they either belong to that group or interested in that group or have some kind of camaraderie with it, which then gives Facebook more targeted advertising on you. And so they would be crazy to actually remove it, but by virtue of that, human smuggling, human trafficking, war crimes, and other things are going on here. So the question is, when you have 3 to 4 billion people sitting on a platform interacting daily, how do you actually deal with this? I just recently wrote an article for Michael Smerconish of CNN where I talk about if we get rid of Section 230, the Facebooks of the world, including the little smaller, more fringe social media platforms, will all have to ramp up their content moderation using things like artificial intelligence, because there's no way that even if Facebook were to hire 1 million content moderators, and that would cost them an absolute fortune, so they're not going to do that, you're going to have to turn up the artificial intelligence, which basically means it's going to err on the side of caution and by default start blocking and removing these things. Not to mention the fact that if you're in a group like this, you're probably desperate, to, let's say, leave your current situation and willing to spend $700 or more to cross the border into the United States. You might be an illegal here, but it may be a better and safer life than what you're facing in your home country. That is a humanitarian crisis basically across Central and South America that I think needs some serious addressing as well. And that's something that I think we take for granted here, that a lot of people that are coming here are trying to come here for a better life. But obviously we want to make sure that everybody is legal, everybody is safe, all these kinds of things. It's a huge, huge problem. There is no easy answer to this, but Facebook, the largest social media platform in the world by far, is facilitating human smuggling. And it's not Facebook's fault per se. They don't condone this by any stretch, and I'm not saying that, but they're allowing this to happen and they're not catching it, and that is something that needs to be addressed. So if you've got a good answer for this other than completely shut down Facebook, which I'm not saying no to, please let me know, because I think this is something that really needs to come to the forefront. This is a debate that we actually need to have here, and we're simply not having it as we talk about the border crisis as either, okay, there's a surge because of Trump, or there's a surge because of Biden, or it's political this or political that, or these people are illegal or refugees or whatever you want to call them. We really need to hone in on how these people are finding this information, misinformation, and then being facilitated across the border, because I think that really helps address the problem and really get to the root cause of this, which is misinformation, and people start showing up when publicly the Biden administration is basically saying, don't show up, just as the Trump administration was. So I think we've got some huge, huge problems here. And again, I'm not adjudicating the politics of that. I want to stick to the Facebook side and tech things of here. So if you have a solution for me, let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.